This conversation will be guided by Guy Bartram as the moderator, who's head of global product marketing at Broadcom. And our speakers are Francesco Bonfiglio, CEO at Dynamo Cloud, Uwe Geier, head of cloud products at Ionos, and Fabio Ciolino, head of product at Aruba Cloud. Gentlemen, enjoy and thank you.
Thank you, Emna. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you've enjoyed the show so far. We've had an interesting day of varying topics so far. I think we started off looking at what sovereignty means, moving into regulation, moving into a panel about different aspects of sovereignty and some of the challenges organizations had. And lastly, we just heard from our partners about some of the solutions they're putting forward. And all of this is great and really good information, but there's one critical piece that's missing to the sovereignty puzzle, and that is how to make some money out of it, how to monetize the sovereign model, and how to create a marketplace. So today we're going to talk about the growing role of a marketplace solution to allow Europe to truly compete against hyperscale providers. So you've all had your introductions. Let's kick this off. Francisco, let's start with you. You've had a long history with frameworks and things like GaiaX and the evolution of standards. There's a lot of different terminology going around at the moment. The GaiaX framework, the GaiaX clearinghouses, SECA, Eurostack, etc. Can you just level the playing field for everyone for 5 to 10 minutes and tell us what all these things are about and what do they mean in context of the marketplace?
Yeah, 5-10 minutes is going to be a challenge, but to start easy, GaiaX, when I was the CEO of GaiaX, and this is a story I tell everyone because it's true, I was interviewed for the job, and when I made the interview, I said, look guys, I have no idea what you want to do. I don't understand what GaiaX is or wants to be, but I can tell you that there's a lot of people out there that don't understand like me. So if I can bring my experience, I've been in the field for 35 years, and I've been in the business. I mean, I've never been in an association before GaiaX. I can tell you what the market is, what the problems are, what I believe the solution can be. And believe it or not, my interview was my 5 years plan in GaiaX. And then I left after 3 years, so there must be a reason why I founded Dynamo. But when I said the problem of Europe is not a stars and stripes flag, let's be honest. If the Americans are great, first of all, they are not Americans, they are private companies, let's put it clear. If they are great and somebody says dominant, somebody says monopolist in the market, it is because they are doing bloody well. And the customers buy them. So if the problem is in the market, we need to act in the market. Regulation is good. Legislation is good. Sovereignty is a nice word, although it belongs to the political domain. In technology, we don't talk about sovereignty. We talk about autonomy, we talk about controllability, that kind of stuff. Sovereignty is a political concept that means being able to apply your own rules in your own territory. If you're not capable to apply your rule, you're not sovereign. And if you think about it, digital is so powerful that it's able to work around any law. That's why we talk about digital sovereignty, because it actually equals to political, societal, democratic sovereignty, if you want. So I said, first of all, we need to understand that people out there, I mean customers and even providers of solutions, have lost a little bit themselves into what it takes to be trustworthy. So first of all, we need to give a definition to trust. And trust, to me, and that was the message I passed when I was in GaiaX, means 3 things. You have to be transparent, controllable, and interoperable. If you can fulfill these 3 requirements, you can be trusted or your service is trustworthy. So the whole effort around GaiaX was to build a trust framework that did not exist before, made of 2 components. One is a set of rules that tells how to be transparent, controllable, interoperable. And another piece of the jigsaw is a piece of technology, code running somewhere that allows for the automatic verification of the compliance to those rules. Because one important thing that we heard today is that compliance is expensive. So let's make it simple, let's make it verifiable, and let's make it verifiable by machines and not by human beings, which by definition are biased. That was the original idea behind GaiaX. And the last piece that we built was the clearinghouse. When I said we need to build a clearinghouse, I was heavily attacked by some members of the board. So why you invented it? I said, look, if you write a piece of software, it has to run somewhere. Like it or not, we need a processor on a node to execute it. I gave it a name, and the clearinghouse, you know, everybody, it's a concept of a point of trust for economic transaction. In the past, this was the meaning of it. So a digital clearinghouse is just a translation to the digital world. So GaiaX introduced this concept of trust. I think it did a good job, but that's not enough, because the other part of the equation is that, okay, we have trustworthy services. Let's say that in Europe we are good because we are compliant, we have good services. But we don't have enough services. The offering is weak. Today, I heard a lot about sovereignty, but I did not hear a word about the market. Do you know the market of cloud in Europe? Do you know the amount of it? The market at the end of 25, the European addressable market of cloud services will be at the end 218 billion euros. By 2030, it's going to be 420 billions. It's a lot. It's doubling. It's the biggest economy in the world. And you know, the level of adoption of cloud in Europe is below 50%. It means 5 companies out of 10 use cloud. Even worse, 85% of the cloud they use is of 3 types: email, file sharing, and collaboration. This is not Francesco's data. This is Eurostat data, so you can go and check. So that means we talk about cloud, but we mean Office 365. That means this is the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of data untapped. That means most of the organizations are not using the data, not even the cloud, they're not using the data. Sometimes they don't know what to do, sometimes they know, but they're scared, and then sovereignty comes back into play. They're scared because they need something they trust. They're scared because they don't want to be locked in. They're scared because they would like to use somebody close to their door, so a local provider that know them since 20 years, but they're small. So we have a market problem. We don't have a technology problem. Of course, we can build whatever technology, the best interoperability technologies, and they will be helpful. But if you don't build a business opportunity, those technologies will not be adopted and will not change the market. So we need technology interoperability on the one side, trust on the other side, or in between if you want. And on top of it, but last but not least, we need commercial interoperability. Because in any economy that is dying, and the market share of European cloud service provider nowadays is 10% overall, and decreased from 26% in 2017 to 10% nowadays, is going to drop down to 0 in 2030. So we need to invert the trend. And the only way to do it is aggregating the effort. We miss an Amazon all sales of European digital services. And that's simply what I'm trying to build with Dynamo. Leaving everybody independent, leaving everybody capable to sell whatever they sell, but expanding their offering, possibly reselling the services of other Europeans. So I think we need to understand the problem is not in research and innovation only, is not in regulation only, is not in trust only, but is also in a lack of offering. The demand is there, the offering is not. Do we have the solutions? Many people ask me the question. Yes, we do. In my career, I've seen maybe 2 cases where an hyperscaler was needed. In all other cases, you could use any other solution, existing solutions. But do you know how complex is the procurement, the orchestration, the governance of a project that involves 2, 3, 5, 10 providers? Impossible. So we need to have a single point of procurement. We need to let the freedom of everyone to be independent, as small as big as they are. But we need to build a kind of a big brand of digital for Europe, which is totally missing. A one-stop place where you can find all we have, and we have a lot.
Thanks. One of the key things I take away from that then is this is an evolution of technology and an evolution of regulation as well that's happening at the same time. How does SECA play in this, the Sovereign Cloud European API?
Yeah, and also you mentioned about the Eurostack, which I'm reluctant to talk about, but the Eurostack is an initiative started by a group of independent experts, different types, researchers. I'm the only entrepreneur in the group, if you want. But the idea is not we need to get rid of America or stuff like that. That would be naive. The idea is that, guys, digital has something to do with physical and logical infrastructure. So for too long, Europe has focused on data as the only valuable part of data economy. Wrong. Data is the fuel. But if you don't have the pipes, no engine works. So we need to focus back on a stack of technologies that builds up from the ground, from chips up to quantum. And that's the concept behind the Eurostack. And to do that, we need to do it together, public and private. Europe is the only continent in the world where we expect somebody up in the commission or somewhere to solve the problem. In China and America, the private sector invests in building solutions. You know why? Because the investments are aligned with the interest of the private. It's not the opposite. It's not the public inventing what needs to be done and the private forced to put the money. And also, we need to balance regulation and innovation. Regulation is good, but we have reached a point of hyper-regulation. And we don't need more, but we need to balance regulation, keep the one that is verifiable, which means enforceable. Otherwise, it's not enforceable, and it's just an overhead. The SECA is another example like Dynamo, starting from the industry. So instead of waiting for the Commission or the member states to invent the solution or the silver bullet, the industry has started to say, we need to do something. Why? Otherwise we die. This is the answer. Because if we don't start collaborating, we will die. Some companies understood it, some others not yet, but unfortunately statistics is statistics. So if we need to collaborate, we need on the one side to find a way to resell on each other. Let's make it simple, or start to build a stronger, bigger commercial offering. On the other side, we need to start to be more interoperable. In this way, we can provide really sovereignty, trust, interoperability, switchability of workloads across our platforms. SECA stands for Sovereign European Cloud APIs. It's an open initiative started, by the way, by IONOS, Aruba, Dynamo, but there's a lot of others that have already joined the queue. And it's an open source project based on Open API specifications, or AES, to do what? To build a one key for all doors. In other words, whoever wants to join SECA has the chance to build something that Europe never had, a common standard for accessing technologies. This is useful for cloud service providers, like the two friends on my side, that could show to the market that anyone using IONOS or Aruba or others can switch their workloads across them, or they can reuse the investment they made to run their workloads on them because they will be totally compatible on the other platforms. But it is also very important to ISVs, to PaaS and SaaS providers, because they can ensure their solutions run on any of these workloads. But it's also very important to system integrators because their job is to develop skills. What are the European skill set today? We haven't any. The certifications on cloud are 3. And this is a real problem because basically we are feeding this dependence from American platforms, forcing all the young generation of engineers to make trainings and certification on the same platforms. We need to break this vicious circle, and the only way is to have a common set of technologies on which you can build a standard, on which you can build training, on which you can build certifications, and at that point you can demand for those certifications in the market, and the system integrators are very looking forward for something like that. So SECA is a concrete initiative bottom-up. Dynamo is a concrete initiative bottom-up to group commercially everybody. Eurostack is a manifesto that is open to anyone and simply launches messages, let's focus on our future, we can make it, but no one is naive. So we know it's a long way, and nobody wants to switch off or get rid of America. No, we just need to start warping and changing the trend a little bit. Otherwise, we'll be dead.
Yeah, it's definitely fine-tuning that needs to happen. We can't turn off the tap without destroying our economy. So, yeah. Uwe, IONOS is obviously a significant player in the cloud market in Germany. and the rest of Europe. Francisco spoke about trust and the complexities around compliance and trust. How is IONOS approaching this? And obviously you guys are now invested in working on SECA. How did that start, and how have you approached this?
So first of all, we recognize trust and compliance not as regulatory checkboxes, right? We rather see them as fundamental pillars of our long-term strategy and value proposition. And as you just said, as significant player, we are very much engaged in regulatory developments and frameworks, such as the Cyber Security Act, NIS2, and of course frameworks like Francesco just mentioned, GaiaX, which aims to strengthen sovereignty and interoperability. But that comes along with kind of complexity, and as this regulatory frameworks have a lot of requirements, and therefore we use a secure by design approach in a way to address this, and have multi-layer encryption, these kind of things, active monitoring, and local data processing for our customers in place. And on the other hand, we very seriously treat European values like data privacy and data protection, not only on a contractual basis, but also implement technical measures for our customers to have live monitoring, access control, and we are fully transparent of where the data of our customers is stored, and we want our customers also to understand how the data is processed so that they stay in control, which is a key element in our perspective of sovereignty, right? Being in control of your data. And in that way, we totally support the European way into a sovereign digital future, and adjust our product offering in that way and build it very modular on a secure by design architecture.
Thanks. So I think there's an interesting kind of difference between the regional cloud providers and what a customer looking for sovereign services will get from a regional cloud provider versus a global hyperscaler. Even in a partnership situation where a global hyperscaler is 50-50 with an incumbent. I think there's a huge role for local cloud providers to play in the scope of sovereign. But I feel there's a need to group together and provide that fourth hyperscale competitive scale and volume and breadth of services. One of the things I often hear is that local cloud providers don't have the innovation, the service portfolios that hyperscalers have. And I think that's very untrue, number one. Number two, I'd say they're able to innovate more, actually. But you're right, there is a general trend of, say, for example, AI. We've got some amazing students coming out of university, very capable in AI and data science. They are being bought by the hyperscalers, hired into an environment where they can have the data set they need, the scale they need, building services that effectively are getting sold back to us, which is crazy, which is nuts. So Fabio, question for you. How do you see the role of local providers in contrast with global hyperscalers when it comes to sovereignty and particularly compliance? What kind of advantages does Aruba offer?
In my opinion, a local cloud provider have the chance to play a very strategic role, and a unique strategic role, because in this context, they cannot act only as, let me say, infrastructure provider or service provider. But in my opinion, they can act as a bridge between, on one side, the specific local needs that, let me say, will remain even in the future. It's not something that can disappear. And it is something that only cloud provider working locally can know exactly and can speak as a partner to their customer. And on the other side, all this complexity coming from regulatory coming from European data strategy that is very important, and we need to probably have this in place, but it is a big complexity for many organizations, because all this day we have been talking about data sovereignty, cybersecurity, and so on. But for many organizations, this is not even their core business. But it's something that they need to be compliant with. But there is a risk, probably what Francesco said before. All this complexity can become a risk for all these organizations. And in this context, I see the strategic role of a local cloud service provider. Because a local cloud service provider, in my opinion, can relieve customer of that burden. How? Providing solutions that meet their local needs, but fully aligned with the European strategy in terms of sovereignty, in terms of data, and so on. And this is exactly the path that we are trying to do in Aruba, with Aruba Cloud. We are trying to design and develop our product, our infrastructure, our cloud ecosystem, sovereign by design. And we are following, let me say, three main directions. The first one is the local needs. Our products are designed to be compliant, to follow the strictest regulation that we have in place, for example, including those coming from or defined from the cybersecurity, the National Cybersecurity Alliance. And this is the only way, for example, to provide cloud services to the public administration. The second path is being actively part in the initiative coming from Europe, from the institutional point of view. Gaia-X is one of that, for example. And the third part is initiative coming in collaboration with the other cloud service provider, local and European. We are member of CISP, and as Francesco and Uwe said, we are working with them, with the Ionos, Dynamo, and other cloud service provider in building this interoperable European cloud ecosystem based on this common framework, common API, so with SECA initiative. So our mission and the role, in my opinion, of local cloud provider to address of this complexity is to be a reliable partner for the customer, a reliable partner in the journey toward the sovereignty.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And you mentioned interoperability. I just want to zoom into that for a brief second. So the Data Act talked about interoperability, but didn't necessarily provide strict guidance on the APIs, the frameworks, or how that actually works. Francisco, I mean, SECA is actually taking a direction in that movement to provide a framework of API and abstraction that will enable interoperability ultimately, right?
Yeah, this is a good point. There's a lot of regulation demanding for things that unfortunately are subject to interpretation. Let's put it this way. Interoperability is one word. Switchability is another word. Reversibility, sometimes I get confused the difference. But anyway, what else? Trust. I counted the word trust in the European digital regulation. It's quite funny. I think it's the most pronounced word. There is no single definition of trust. So in my past, I asked the Commission, why don't you build Digital Service Act, Digital Trust Act, such that everybody understands what it takes to be trusted. So there is two things to consider about interoperability. Interoperability means me and you and some others in the room decide to work together, be compatible. There is an idiosyncrasy in nature because we are competitors. So why should we be interoperable? And this is the elephant in the room. Everybody wants interoperability, but interoperability goes against the interest of the individuals. We do have a big elephant in the European room because we have not built an ecosystem culture. Everybody preaches European and then plays individually. So to be interoperable, you need two elements. On the one side, you need to feel the pain. You need to be convinced that alone you won't go far. And Mr. Trump helped us an awful lot, waking up and making an executive order every morning. But if not now, when? I mean, if we don't understand that we are totally slave, I mean, any economy, we're not talking about IT here, we're talking bank, insurances, transportation, healthcare, energy, you name it, depends on IT platforms, and IT platforms depend on cloud. So if we don't understand that we need to be more resilient and independent, and if we don't understand that nobody individually is capable to fulfill this demand, and the demand is big, as I said before, it's huge, it's a big opportunity, well, we will never become interoperable because nobody feels the pain. So first we need to feel the pain. I'm doing an effort to pull together companies convinced that they feel the pain, so they need to collaborate. Because commercial interoperability is even worse. They need to share customers' experience, territories, and business. But they understood. Because some providers, Ionos is big in Germany, it's almost not unknown, but is not making big business in Italy or in France. OVH, and my friends in the room from OVH, they are big in France, but not as big in Italy or in Germany. We can go around, and the same story. So do we want to be big in Japan? Okay, we need to be big in Europe. We need to create a single market. We need to feel the pain, and we need to start collaborate commercially. Why? Because the offering is too small and the demand is too big. Second, technical interoperability. And here there's, again, an idiosyncrasy, because as soon as you start talking about technology interoperability, you have the room full of geeks and freaks about technology. Yes, okay. I mean, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There is tons of technology, interoperability technologies. But we need to have agreement across 2, 3, multiple players on defining a common set of APIs, not to change your platform, but at least to create adapters that are compatible to the same common set of APIs. So technically speaking, this is a no-brainer. The problem is convincing the people that it's time to work together. We need to move into cooperative model. I always make this joke. If 200 years ago, the agriculture business did not understand that the farmers were dying and they needed to group in cooperatives, we wouldn't be able to eat our own fruit today. Pointless. So farmers in Trentino, they make the fantastic apples, but the market is asking for mangoes. Unfortunately, we have mangoes in Sicily, but if they did not constitute cooperatives, they wouldn't be able to stay alive. I'm sorry to say that, but we did the same model for cloud, because in Europe we are fragmented, dispersed, which doesn't mean we make good apples and good mangoes. Yes, we do it, but somebody does apples, somebody does mangoes. We need to group them together. Then you have technology interoperability. And technology interoperability is a no-brainer. So SECA is one initiative, possibly out of many. Why nobody started it? Because you need to start from the companies. So Achim Weiss, the CEO of Ionos, Stefano Cecconi, the CEO of Aruba, said, we need to work together, otherwise we will not continue our business. We need many CEOs to say the same.
No, I totally agree with what Francesco said. What I'm seeing today is something is changing, and sovereignty is an opportunity for this change. Because in the past, sovereignty was just a regulatory requirement, just something to be compliant with, but not a strategic imperative for being competitive in the market. And this is something that cloud service provider need to keep in consideration right now. Because if we keep to playing alone, as Francesco said, probably we will not able to provide the customer with the answer to meet their needs, and we are going to lose the market. So we need to join the force with other cloud service provider in order to, let me say, offer to our customer a very European cloud ecosystem. SECA works with this goal, with this aim, but yes, we need to work more on that in order to provide our customer with specific local needs, but also with the possibility to be interoperable in Europe.
I think it's this sovereign cloud is a catalyst. It's an opportunity that is now being recognized pretty much globally, that these types of services are required by customers now. And I think you mentioned something that made me think quickly. Interoperability, if it's boiled down to its bare necessities, so I can move one workload between one cloud, another cloud, you lose the value of those cloud environments, because the value is above the workload. It's in the application layer, it's in the services that are being provided. So having an orchestration abstraction on top of that allows cloud providers to maintain their unique value proposition, which is critical, whilst providing interoperability. So I think that there's good things there. And actually, the interoperability kind of mandate coming out of the Data Act is actually a good thing, in that it's caused this catalyst of thought and innovation to come through. We do have, however, a hell of a lot of regulation. And Uwe, in IONOS, how are you guys actually dealing with all this regulation that's coming down? Because customers are concerned about their future stance and making the right decision, and we don't know where regulation is going to go in making that decision. So it's a kind of a bet on where to be.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's quite a momentum in this, and we have this the Data Act, right, and then we have DORA, the Digital Operational Resilience Act, the upcoming AI and Cloud Development Act. So there's really quite a momentum in this. And I have to admit that is quite a challenge, as they are not increasing by numbers only, but also in technical depth, right? DORA, for example, especially for the financial sector customers, has a huge requirement on operational resilience and incident response capabilities. So which requires a constant adaptation of our service delivery model, and including even vendor selection or vendor management at some point, right? And our approach to this is basically twofold. We actively engage with government bodies in Germany, like the BSI, and participate and anticipate through our conversations where the trend is going and how to adapt. And that is really necessary, and they want us also to contribute as a significant player. So they want us there, and drives this to some extent. And the second fold is we follow a kind of a compliance by design approach. And that goes all the way to air-gapped environments already, where this regulatory frameworks can be extracted to their full extent. And what we receive as feedback of our customers is they want exactly this, to build up a resilient and compliant services for themselves on a trusted cloud service provider. So given that feedback, I think it's the right direction, and those frameworks will not go away, they will not decrease, right? They will rather increase in the complexity as well along with it. So staying in conversation and collaboration is basically a good approach, which works for us.
And you mentioned the data and compliance. I mean, you said the data is the fuel. I like that analogy. And when you're thinking about how you feed the engine with data. So data has a lot of different classifications that can be associated with it, a lot of different risk parameters that can be associated with it. How are you working with the SECA kind of design and framework to allow for a certain amount of data sharing and understanding what data classification should and shouldn't be flowing across that framework?
Well, this is another very interesting point. As Uwe was mentioning about BSI, and C5 is the German standards for cybersecurity. France has got a standard called Secnum Cloud, and an agency like BSI, which is called ANSSI. Italy has got another standard, which is called, it was invented by the Polo Strategico Nazionale, and the agency is the ACN, Agenzia per la Cybersecurity Nazionale. So all the countries are trying to do the same thing in different ways, different names, different problems. Data classification is one of the problems, and this is creating confusion in the market. Likewise, the compliance to the regulation is creating confusion. So one thing that can be done, and this is what we are doing in SECA and in Dynamo, is to simplify the process of compliance by design. In other words, verify inside SECA, for example, at API level, the type of characteristics of your service, fulfilling, let me say, the compliance to specific requirements which are in DORA or Secnum Cloud or ACN or whatever. So we kind of summarize in a common set of rules what different standards ask in different ways under different documents in a single set of verification. What we do in Dynamo, and this is very much appreciated, we built an engine. So I followed what I started with Gaia-X, with the clearinghouse, and I extended the clearinghouse to make a metrics of verification of all the service characteristics against all the digital regulation. It's not complete, but it does a lot. So that means you publish a service, you make your declaration, you countersign it with a signature which is eIDAS, so European standard for digital identity, which is legally binding. And that service is verified, published, anybody can search for it. So you can imagine this clears to zero the effort to understand, is this service compliant? If yes, to what regulation? Who is responsible for this statement? So there is ways to automate regulation in the Data Act, Data Governance Act, AI Act, and all the acts. And I think this belongs to one of my mantra. We need to move from tech reg to reg tech. So we need to use technology to automate the compliance regulation. Otherwise, people will go mad. It's simply impossible to spend all the money to become compliant.
Yeah. Some practical knowledge and approach.
And somebody said earlier in the morning that many startups go over the ocean for two reasons. One is money, two is lack of compliance, easier regulation. Let's be honest. I'm talking to hundreds of startups making incredible solutions that are astonishing. They could lead the market literally. The money is a problem, but no more. I mean, they can find the money, but regulation is impossible. How can they reach the market? How can they demonstrate they're complying with this and that? They have no money to do that. So joining Dynamo, they can automate this process and become more visible. So the solution sometimes is not complex. But again, you need to build an ecosystem. Otherwise, they will be completely lost in the middle of nowhere. Nobody knows them.
I mean, this is probably the main role that cloud service provider can play. Provide the customer with a solution that are compliant by design. Just to, as I said before, just to relieve customer of that burden, because for them it's impossible. I mean, many startups are not able to manage all this complexity coming from regulatory and so on. And let me say, they probably do not have to concentrate their force on that. They need to concentrate their force on the business, on developing the project of the new startup. So we need to do this step, in my opinion, as a cloud service provider, providing what they need in terms of regulation and so on, but not, let me say, as a patch over the infrastructure, but infrastructure where compliance is embedded, if we can say in that way, is embedded in the infrastructure. So this is the step that we need to do.
So I think you've got a nice kind of story here. You've got the evolution of your services, the evolution of regulation, which you now bake in by default into your services. You've got customers who need to worry about their business, not their infrastructure, haven't got a clue what the regulation is all about, and they can lean on you for this. And now through something like SECA, we have the opportunity to expose that into a broader marketplace solution. How do you see cloud providers like collaborating around this?
I mean, in order to be able to provide this kind of product, this kind of solution, in the end, we need to be compliant with data sovereignty. We have talked about that all day, and it is probably right now the aspect where customers are more interested in. But there are two other layers, in my opinion, very important. In such presentation this morning, someone talked about it, that are the operational sovereignty and the technological sovereignty. So when we design, as I said before, an infrastructure, a product compliant by design, we need to take in consideration also these two layers. And the operational sovereignty means that customer has the complete control and clear visibility on where their data and their workload are handled. And the technological sovereignty is what we are trying to be compliant with the SECA, because means give customer independence. Independence from vendor lock-in, independence from a proprietary solution. So interoperability is very important, such as introducing the offering open source solution in order to provide customer, to give customer this concept of independency. So this is how, in my opinion, we are what we are trying to do with the SECA, just develop the technological sovereignty into the product.
Yeah, and operational sovereignty, we touched on it earlier, it is critical. You can build the best sovereign stack, but most threats come from within. If people can be manipulated to access things or provide passwords or bad players, you need to have security cleared individuals, cleared in certain standards for certain regions, and even then you need to monitor and control what access to which data they have. And I think with AI, we've got to also know where that data is going to be fed to, and how it's going to be consumed further down the supply chain, which makes it a lot more complicated. To your point, Francisco, it almost comes to you're adding metadata to data to tag it with a certain classification, and that processing has got to go all the way through that supply chain. Folks, we've got a couple of minutes left. I just want to wrap up. I'm going to ask each of you one question. Just give it a short answer. We've seen this ecosystem grow. At VMware, we nurtured our sovereign cloud providers. We're very proud of them. We're very proud of the ecosystem partnership we have. Now, with what we're discussing today, with the evolution of a real marketplace and the potential for becoming a real competitor to hyperscale cloud in a sovereign stance, where do you see the next 2 to 3 years? Uwe, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so I see this as an opportunity, as a chance, and building a sovereign alternative as really as an opportunity. I believe we can differentiate in compatibility and in simplicity. Talked about that a lot. And there's also, I think, one other element which we haven't touched, but it's price prediction and transparency. That is really keen, as many hyperscalers have unpredictable pricing structures, which makes it hard on budgeting. And the third one is that building compliance into core infrastructure will be the enabler for customers to come to us. And again, we at IONOS see this as a huge business opportunity, and this will continue to grow. That's my view on it.
I'm sure it will compliant by design, and I love that. Francisco.
In 3 years' time, I'm expecting that everybody will be aware of the problem in a stronger way. I'm expecting the cloud to move from a hyper-concentrated into a hyper-distributed, because otherwise we don't get the value out of distributed data, and data is everywhere, why compute not? We will possibly start to build an opportunity which is there, nobody's taking, which is the real creation of an edge network. Everybody talks about edge, but we don't have an edge provider, edge network. And the only way to do it is not to reinvent it from scratch, but find a way to connect different dots, which are different providers. And the only way to do that is through common interoperability. And there's a big thing that is coming over our head, which is AI. And AI is running faster than any strategy we can make, and will replace most of the application layer that we have today. We need to be aware of that. So all the ERP, the CRM, and all the stuff that we used to buy as single pieces will be replaced by AI and agentic. So if you look at the other way around, this is a great opportunity, because if we build a network, the compute storage network with the power, with sufficient power, maybe even the technology providers will become more relevant, because you will need less software, individual software solutions, and more AI computing power. I think this will happen anyway, and my hope is that instead of dropping from 10 to 0, in 3 years' time we will stay at 10% and maybe in a couple of years go to 20% of the market share. It's not much, but 20% of 400 billion is a lot of money.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And interesting you mentioned the agents there, and actually having SECA working with AI agents could be really good opportunity for our service providers. And lastly, Fabio.
My expectation for the next 2 years is that we still work on two different paths, two parallel paths. One lead by institution, by regulatory and so on, and one lead by probably industries working on this business. But there is a new player that, as Francesco said, is moving faster than any strategy, called artificial intelligence, that, in my opinion, could change a little bit the card on the table.
Yeah, 100% agree. Okay, well, that's all we have time for. Hopefully that's rocked your world a little bit. It certainly rocked mine when we started talking about SECA and working out the opportunities for our sovereign cloud providers here. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Questions?